Hey guys, I'm Fighter for JC. Thank you for tuning in, and today I would like to talk about Dark Souls 3. It came out about 2 months ago, I believe sometime in April, and I picked it up maybe 2 weeks after it came out, and I beat the game. I think it took me about 2 weeks to beat that game, and a total of no less than 68 hours. Now, I am a complete noob to the Dark Souls franchise. I did play a little bit of Bloodborne. I didn't come close to beating it. I beat maybe 5, 6, 7 bosses total before I quit that game. But Dark Souls, it's the real deal. Everybody talks about it. Fans will swear up and down that it's the best game ever made, and it's difficult but fair. And that's really the whole thing about Dark Souls. It's difficult but fair. And I guess you get some sort of street cred if you beat that game. You're supposed to be a hardcore gamer. Now, I'm not really into difficult games. I want to be entertained, and I don't want to stress out over my game. I mean, I like a little bit of challenge, but I don't want challenge that is insurmountable. But you know what? I gotta admit, I've been brainwashed by all the good stuff that I've read about Dark Souls throughout the years, really. And when Dark Souls 3 came out, for the PS4, to me, I felt like that would be the best jumping off point or jumping in point in the series. And I read some contradictory things from different sources. Some say that it's the most accessible Dark Souls game to date, while others are saying it's the most difficult Dark Souls title ever. So which one is it? Well, I can't tell you that because I'd never played any Dark Souls games prior to Dark Souls 3. But you know what? They got to me, and I wanted to try it and see if I can beat it. And I did. I did beat it. 68 hours. And the thing is, everybody says that it's tough but fair. Now, I don't know what they mean by fair. Dark Souls 3 is not fair. In fact, it's one of the cheapest games I have ever played. The last boss took me about 10 hours to finally beat. Now, that was a 2-day session for me, about 5 hours at a time, before I finally beat it. Now, everybody talks about the satisfaction that comes from beating a boss that beat you over and over and over and over again, and that there's nothing quite like it. Well, you know what? It is quite satisfying, to be honest, to beat a boss that has kicked your butt, several times in a row. But to spend 10 hours on one boss, that's longer than a lot of games. It's longer than that's longer than all Call of Duty campaigns. 10 hours. Let me tell you, I would have been just as happy to have beaten the boss, that final boss, Soul of Cinder, in maybe an hour than I was after 10 hours. It was a waste of time, really. It's not that the game is difficult, it is, but it's just the design that really messes with you. It's not so much the boss fights that wear you down, but it's getting to the boss fights. Most other games with legitimate difficulty, like Ninja Gaiden, or either game, or whatever game in the series, Ninja Gaiden 2, Sigma 2, whatever, if you get killed by a boss, you pretty much get to start over right away, or very close to it. But in Dark Souls 3, and I presume in all other Dark Souls title, because it's the same way with Bloodborne, you respawn at a checkpoint or a bonfire, whatever you call it, and you have to sprint your way past all these monsters, and it'll take you about a minute or two to get to your boss fight, and you hope that along the way you don't get hit several times by these monsters, so that you don't go into the boss fight with your health compromised already. Now, that's really the thing that got to me. Losing over and over again, that's okay. I don't like to lose over and over again, but just the suffering I had to go through, not through the hands of the bosses, but just knowing that just to get my shot at redemption, I had to go through this gauntlet of enemies who will take cheap shots as I run past them. And that's really what got to me. And I'm really, really glad that I beat Dark Souls 3, but mainly because I could say that I beat it. That give me street cred. I really don't care. I'm not trying to be a hardcore gamer. I don't claim that I am. Skill wise, I would say that I'm average, probably no better than average. And if I can beat Dark Souls 3, I'm pretty sure most of you guys can as well. But is it worth it? Well, if you've never played any Dark Souls title, don't believe anyone who says that the game is not that hard, because the game absolutely is as hard as advertised. And it's not just a matter of you being impatient or being used to other action games. It's not as simple as being patient and being intelligent and taking your time to study the boss's patterns. It's much worse than that. It's really cheap. I mean, I don't want to go into every single detail. And if you're dying 50 times at the hands of any enemies in any video games, then there's got to be something wrong with the design. And people who are telling you that you should go ahead and try this game because it's not that hard, they're lying to you. These are the hardcore fans who are just trying to brag that they're so good that a game like Dark Souls 3 is so easy for them. That's really what they're trying to say. Or they just want to deceive you into supporting their franchise, because if nobody buys their game, then there's not going to be any sequels or any other game like it. And they have to tell people that everybody can play it if you just focus and throw away all the bad habits that you learned from other action titles. But it's a bunch of crock. This game is way too hard. I beat it 68 hours. It took me 10 hours to beat Soul of Cinder. And I don't know, is that worth it to you? On the positive side of things, what's really great about Dark Souls 3 is that despite this unfair difficulty, I felt compelled to see the game through all the way to the very, very end. And it's not just because I want to have the bragging rights, for beating Dark Souls 3, but you know what? They actually made a very compelling world. You actually feel like you're on a quest, that you've been transported into this miserable, nightmarish kind of land, and the only way out would be to beat the final boss. And I've had several frustrating boss fights. The Aldrich Devourer of Gods, I think that was my first real wall that I hit. Dragon Slayer Armor, that's one tough one too. But you know what? I saw it through because the world was really, really immersive, and it really motivated me to beat the game. And that's really the best compliment I can give Dark Souls 3. And the combat mechanics, they're responsive, they're very precise. So that's another thing that people say about Dark Souls 3. That is true. But as far as being tough but fair, don't believe a word of it. The game is not fair at all. You'll have your easy breaks every once in a while. There's a couple of bosses there that could be beaten fairly easily by anyone. But other than that, it's an exercise in frustration. The guy you're looking at behind me right now, that is the Soul of Cinder, the final boss. And 10 hours. I don't know how many tries that took me. I lost count. Actually, if I started counting, I probably would have been depressed and never finished the game. So there you have it, my thought on Dark Souls 3. What do you think? Have you beaten that game? Have you tried it? Do you plan on getting it? Let me know your thoughts. I know it's not the brandest, newest game out there right now, but hey, thanks for tuning in.